Hi. This little video is just in case you want to refresh anything. Or if you happen to miss the class today, you'll be able to see what happened and pause along the way and participate with your classmates. So, we're going to be talking about objectives, organization, and collaboration. And the organization aspect is really implicit in a lot of what we're doing. Please note all images are Creative Commons by attribution or created specifically for this class. So, nothing was stolen. Now, in this class, we're going to be talking about goals, hitting the target. We're going to keep calm and organized, and we're going to look at working together, collaborating to create lessons. Now, goals, I tend to differentiate between goals and objectives. Not everybody does this, but I find that it's very useful to have two different vocabulary terms for these two different concepts. So a goal is something that's off in the distance. In this picture you see the mountain kind of evocative of this challenge off in the distance. You want to climb the mountain. And that's a goal. It's something that's not necessarily going to be met today, although there will be a day when that goal is met. Usually when I talk about goals, I talk about the goal of a unit or the goal of a project, but that's something broader. When I talk about objectives are the sort of individual guides. So if you look at a goal of making an origami Pegasus, right, you've got individual steps along the path to make that Pegasus, and that's kind of your each lesson. And finally, objectives are standards driven. So you might have a goal that's related to standards, but your objectives are definitely driven completely by the standards. So there's some more information about this available at tinyurl.com/YSU-support. Make sure you get capital YSU. And lowercase support, and that's the kind of companion website for this. So an objective example. Students will demonstrate learning of human-environment interaction by writing a paragraph describing how the land had to be changed to build their house. So this is closely related to a fourth grade objective, talking about geography and students understanding geographical concepts. And you see how it does two things. First, it tells me exactly what they're learning. They're learning human-environment interaction. And it also tells me how I will know that they learned. And that's by writing a paragraph describing how the land had been changed. You notice that this isn't student will come up with examples or student will think about something. This is something that I can either collect and verify or walk around the classroom and verify that the student is indeed doing what I ask them to do. Now, obviously, the objective is kind of that mini goal of the lesson. It's the end point in that lesson. It's not all of the details. Now, bring it all together. We've got our lessons, which is where we're going to spend most of our time. Then we've got the target of each lesson is an objective, and then the target of all of these objectives and lessons put together is a goal. We have goals as our end point, objectives lead to goals, and lessons lead to our objectives. So you'll hear me talking about teaching to the objective. And that's why I'm talking about it, because you have specific things that you want to accomplish, and you want to teach to that objective. And if you've written your objectives well, teaching to the objective will help your students to be able to pass your class and learn a lot of new information. Now, in middle grades classrooms, a lot of the middle grades operate as a small unit. So you'll go into some schools and you'll see that there's the Eagle group or the Gecko group or whatever. They've, identified themselves as a specific learning unit. And there's often 3 or 4 teachers that work together within that specific unit to cooperatively plan instruction. This enables them to do cross-curricular lessons and to support curricular ideas across the lesson. Now this getting organized. To do collaborative planning, you have to be really organized. You have to do meetings where you're planning out ideas, you're setting goals, and you're identifying objectives. You're also going to be doing peer review of these objectives to make sure that you are indeed teaching to your objectives and doing what you. So how do you plan cooperatively? First, you determine the goal for your team. What's your guiding principle for the next unit of instruction? Second, you're going to identify standards that can align with those goals. Now, if you go back to that YSU support site, you're going to notice that all of the standards are linked there. And finally, you're going to be writing objectives that help to meet those standards. Keep in mind that you're going to be addressing standards in a variety of different ways throughout the course of the semester, so your objective does not need to address the complete standard all the time. In reality, you're going to be addressing little pieces of different standards throughout the course of the semester and tying them together. You're going to be showing your students how things tie together. So here's an example of your goal. Students will increase spatial reasoning skills. This is the goal. This is a grade 4 goal. Standards. In the ELA classroom, this is a Common Core standard. Students need to explain events, procedures, ideas, or concepts in a historical, scientific, or technical text, including what happened and why based on specific information in the text. So you provide the students with a text that deals with spatial reasoning, and then you ask them to explain the events, procedures, or ideas. In math, apply the area and perimeter formulas for rectangles in real world and mathematical problems. And this is pretty clear cut how it increases spatial reasoning. Social studies, map and scale and cardinal and intermediate directions can be used to describe the relative location of physical and human characteristics of the Ohio and the United States. So this is helping them to understand their environment and increase their geospatial reasoning skills. And in science, recognize that 70% of the Earth's surface is water, which is why the Earth is known as the blue planet. We know this statistic, but it's kind of difficult sometimes to conceptualize this, and this is where the spatial reasoning connection comes in. Now I'd like you to pause the video and select your core area. If you're ELA, use this specific standard. If you're math, use that standard, and so on and so forth. If you're a different content area, such as perhaps foreign language, then find a standard that will help to deal with spatial reasoning and do this activity. So pause the video and write an objective that includes content related to the specific standard, and then write an activity that will help you to identify that all students have learned that content. When you're done, restart the video and we'll go to the next slide. Great. So in class, we will have shared those objectives with the class. And now we're going to be doing the in-class task 1. You're going to be forming into teams 4 to 5, depending on how the class breaks up. And I want you to write a whole team goal, write an individual objective for your content area, and share your objective with your team for feedback. Now, note that one person is going to be sharing the goal and objectives with the class. So in your team, you're going to have a leader, a note taker, a timekeeper, and a speaker. Now, you're all reasonable individuals, so I'm going to let you pick those roles. The leader is the person who's most adept at keeping everybody on task. Your note taker is going to be a person who shares a document with the group. So you can use Google Docs or Evernote or any sort of collaborative thing like Crocodoc to make notes. Now, the note taker is primarily responsible for taking notes, but everybody should be making sure that the notes being taken are adequate and accurate. Then there's the timekeeper. We're going to have a specific amount of time in class to be able to do this, and the timekeeper is going to be keeping track of the time. You're not going to want to spend the whole time coming up with a goal. And finally, your speaker. Your speaker is going to be your public speaker who stands up at the end of class and tells everybody what your goal and everybody's objectives were. Your team task is to write complete goals and objectives. And your team motivation, so this is kind of your imaginary motivation. Pretend your principal has asked you to model goal-objective relationships. So you want to come up with a really good example of how objectives can support a goal. Now, at the end of class, I want you to share your goals and objectives with the class. Everybody will be required to submit their own goals and objectives. So you're going to submit your group goal as an individual. You're going to submit your individual objective so that I can see whether or not it connects to that goal cognitively. And then if you have any questions or concerns about what we covered in class, I'll be happy to answer those questions. And all of that is included in the form at tinyurl.com/YSU-exit. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.